What's up, and welcome back to Opposites Attract podcast. This is Sonja Ramirez, your girl, and I'm sitting next to
Miguel Ramirez, and we have our special guest, Sandi Cimino. Welcome.
Yeah, we're excited to have you.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
You know, we were just talking about how it's crazy raising kids, and these kids don't come with instructions or a manual. And so,
absolutely,
you know, there's so much information out there. And it's funny because when we met Sandi.
So how did we meet?
Yes. So we met Sandi. Our school district provides parenting classes, which is super cool. Yeah. And so him and I have been, talking back and forth, about our daughter.
Trying to figure things out.
Yes. Trying to figure things out. And I got an email and I'm like, oh my God, here's our answer. Why do kids do what they do?
Yeah, that was the name of the class.
Yes.
Yeah. Why do they do what they do?
Oh, that was the perfect. I'm like, we're going. Going. I don't know what you have going on, but you got to cancel it. And we are going. And we showed up, and there was a front and center table, and nobody was sitting there. So Miguel and I look at him. I'm like, we're going to the front.
Yeah, that's what she said. I wasn't a very good student, so I was like, can we sit in the back somewhere?
Because bad kids sit in the back, right?
Yeah. So welcome, Sandi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excited to have Sandi, tell us a little bit about your background. Like, I know you, obviously we met in a parenting class,
right?
And it was about children's behaviors and brain development. But yeah, tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay. Well, my degree is actually in family sociology. So I've done something most of my adult career with kids and families, mostly parents, mostly doing parent education and things like that.
Nice.
And I kind of started on this path because of something that my son was struggling with. And in preschool, and we all know preschool has a fairly high turnover rate, he was having all these transitions with teachers. And so it was rough. He was just really, it was hard for him. He would get very emotional. And so I started researching flexibility. Like, how do we help him with these transitions to be flexible? And so flexibility kind of led me to executive function, which is what the workshop was about, was like, why do they do those crazy things that they do? And so most of what I've learned and most of what I teach in parenting classes comes from my own parenting struggles. And so that's how I got to, doing these kinds of classes. And I just love doing the parent thing. I love kids, and I love my kids. I've loved every stage. Every stage has been hard, but right now they're 18 and 14. So most of what I'm doing kind of out in the world deals with parents of teenagers. Yeah. So doing a lot of those classes and focusing on parents of teens, because so much is going on that I didn't even realize if I hadn't jumped into it. But yeah.
So do you have a boy and a girl, or
an 18-year-old boy and 14-year-old girl?
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah. Very, very cool.
So she's got experience with what we're going to be going through.
I do.
I want to prepare, okay?
Right.
Because I'm so scared.
Yeah.
Because we had 3 teenagers for a while. So my sister passed away. We took on her 3 teenagers. Okay. Yeah. But it was totally different scenario. We had no idea what the heck we were doing.
Well, yeah, it was that one's really different because they had a different background. Like they had a tough upbringing. Like theirs is completely different than our kids. Right. And we also didn't go through the raising process. Like it was just like, bam, all of a sudden 3 teens. Yeah. And it's like, what do we do now?
Right. But listening to others that have teenagers, and it's so crazy because nobody's talking about it.
Right.
They're not talking about it. And what and correct me if I'm wrong, I came to a realization that the reason why they're not talking about it is because that they feel that as a parent, it is a self-reflection of their parenting.
Absolutely.
And they don't talk about it. So that shame and guilt is why no one's talking about it. And everybody thinks that their home is they're the only home going through what they're going through.
I guess kind of like if your kid's getting bullied, a lot of times maybe parents won't want to talk about it because it's like, well, I'm responsible for the kid. And if they're being bullied, then it's something that I'm not doing correctly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So...
So I will tell you, I spied on Sonja and Miguel, and before coming on here, watched several of the podcasts. And the one that you guys, where you first talked about taking the class, I want to say for all the parents out there and for you guys are doing the most important thing right, and that is getting your marriage right. That is the most important thing. If I can say one thing and we cut the podcast off, it's take care of yourself. Make sure your relationship with your significant other is strong. You don't always have to be on the same page because we come from different backgrounds. We have different ideas, but the communication, being able to talk about the hard stuff, encouraging and supporting each other when you get it wrong, because you get it wrong on a day. I get it wrong on a daily basis.
Yes.
And so that's the first thing, is that if you guys, are keeping your marriage strong, that is the most important thing in being a good parent. Because when you're strong and you have that, and you can tag team when it's like,
when
I
I've
cannot
had enough,
handle, I can't handle it anymore. And you talked a bit about, on the podcast, about your son's emotions, about the anger.
Yeah.
And so that's tough, because in our society and in what we have immediate access to through social media and TV is scary. We see anger as the equivalent of violence. And there is a woman I follow, her name is Tree Franklin, and she talks a lot about emotions and being highly sensitive. And she has this thing, emotions are energy in motion. So when we can take sort of that fear of anger, because anger is the tip of the iceberg. There's tons of stuff going on underneath. And our teenagers can't tell us what's going on because they're still learning how to identify and how to talk about their emotions. But if we just remember it's energy in their body in motion, that's what the happy emotions, the good yes. emotions that we think are good emotions, same thing. It's energy in motion.
I like that.
Yeah, and if we can take that judgment out of it, like, why is my son so angry? I have a highly sensitive, I think I talked about it, passionate, I think feisty, which is all good for a girl in today's world, but it took us a long time, and she's still working on it. At 14, she's still working on it, and
I'm still working on it.
I know we're all still working on it.
But imagine if we help them to identify their emotions and how to, whether it's angry or stress, how to deal with that, how to manage that. Right. If we can teach them now while they're younger, then they won't be going through this at 40 or 50
they'll
or
always
stuff,
be stuff.
Yeah,
there will be.
Yeah, if they can understand and accept and celebrate who they are. So our feisty kids, our passionate kids, they're always going to find themselves in a mess with their emotions. But if they recognize, okay, so this didn't work out so good, but I'm still a good person, that's half the battle.
And you know what? Last week we had my friend Rich on the podcast, and he was talking about how it was about Buddhism and mindfulness. And he was talking about how when he starts going through some things, like now, because he realizes, he's like, all right, I kind of sit in these emotions for a couple minutes, and then I realize that it is what it is, and just kind of, but once you realize, you kind of, okay, it's happening again.
Yeah.
Let me chill out and relax. But if you don't know, it's just continues going.
Right.
You know?
Once you become aware.
Yeah, and we talked about this. I talked a little bit about it in the class with, teens and what their brains, and the video from Dan Siegel talking about, this is where they're figuring out who they are. So in the midst of figuring out what's my passion, who am I, what do I want to do, who do I want to be in the world, who do I want to be like, who do I not want to be like, in the middle of all this is this emotion soup that goes on inside. And so when we talk about brain development, that emotion center of the brain, that limbic system is comes online pretty quickly. So it's more hardwired. You talked about the myelin. It's more hardwired.
I'm so glad you're here, because I sounded like such an idiot on that one. I'm like,
I was like,
there's myelination happening.
There's stuff happening in the brain.
And then I'm like, you know what? Go look it up for yourselves, because you don't want to be like Miguel said. Yeah.
But that video, you gave him the Dan Siegel video, and that really explains it in a way that's real easy to understand. But so emotions get first dibs on everything, know, and when you add in a temperament that's passionate and feisty and somebody that's very in tune with their emotions, then that gets big. And the mindfulness piece, I run into a lot of people that are hesitant to talk about or do mindfulness because they do equate it with Buddhism. And so, there is a little bit of that religious or, that kind of barrier. But mindfulness is simply teaching ourselves and helping our kids just be aware in the moment.
Yes.
And so to do that, we got to slow down all the stuff happening upstairs in order to just really be present in the moment.
And that's our daughter. Our daughter is very scattered. She's like, Mommy, it took me a long time, right, babe? To focus, to be present.
Yes.
It took me 2 car accidents. It took me,
Yeah.
just to focus and to slow down. And I think that's where her room becomes a disaster because she's just like thinking, okay, I'm going to go play with my friend. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to do that. Her priorities, right? Like you said.
Drop everything and just head out to go do the next thing.
Yes. Clothes, everything, just everything,
Yep.
And helping her to become more aware and to settle down her thoughts to kind of, what's your priority right now? Like, what did I ask you to do and to help her prioritize? Right. How do we do that? How do we motivate our kids?
Is this for you or for the kid?
It's for all of us.
Right? Because trust me, there's parents out there who have these little Tasmanian devils going around their house, jacking everything up.
Yeah. Well, and there are parents out there, and I will fully admit I'm one of them, that wants to motivate the other one to do certain things. So we're talking motivation. When you think about how you motivate Miguel, or Miguel, how you motivate Sonja, it's kind of the same thing. It's like, what's in it for me? Right? It's like, let me communicate sort of what's in it for you. And they may not be on board because a lot of times when we're trying to teach them things like organization and time management, it's hard for them to see what's in it for me.
So it's like explaining the why behind why you're asking them.
Right.
That's what,
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you were mentioning, obviously working on your relationship as parents. That's huge for the kids also.
Yeah.
What about parents that are split up? Because that's a very common thing nowadays.
It absolutely is. And I always say, to the best of your ability, you're the adults in the relationship. You have a brain that's farther along, but not all divorces end up amicable. And so I get a lot of parents in classes that say, we do this way, but when they go with the other parent, it's either even more strict. It's either this authoritarian, this dictatorship in that household, or it's no rules, or it's chaotic,
it's
or
the opposite of whatever.
It's conflicting with what happens at home.
Yeah.
Or in your home. And so the only answer I have is you can only control what you can control.
Yeah.
You can only control what you can control. When they go to the other parent's house, you can't control that. I mean, absent of safety, obviously safety is of utmost concern, and you want to make sure that they're safe at the other parent's house. But I would say it's, and this came from a parent in one of our parenting classes, and they were co-parenting, and they had a pretty good relationship, but there was definite difference in parenting practice in the two houses.
I think that's very common.
Yeah. Absolutely. Under the same roof, we all have different parenting practices. But what they did that I thought was so effective that I share with other parents everywhere is that when they got home, before they even got out of the car, they would go pick the kids up. They'd sit in the car and basically have a family meeting in the car. And it's great for kids if you can remember the benefit. It's great for kids because they start to learn there are different rules everywhere I go. Because that's life. Yeah. There are different rules wherever we go. And so helping them to transition, giving them that space, and this is another kind of mindfulness type thing, giving them that space to transition from, okay, at, this house, you guys, got to have free will, you got to eat, donuts for dinner, and, but remember, and remember is a great tool to use because that helps them engage the executive function, telling them to remember rather than telling them, because telling them is kind of a lower order. Like if you say, I told you to go clean your room, go clean your room. Remember. Is that lower order, like I'm telling you what to do. So it's remember what you're supposed to do. And then they have to think about it. And it starts to engage that. They have to remember where they were, what happened, what words, what was it that mom said that I was supposed to do?
So kind of like, remember, if you keep your room clean, then you can go out and play with your friends.
Or remember.
Why. Remember what happens after you clean your room.
Okay.
So you don't want to feed them to just, inserting. It is. It takes a lot of practice.
I'm like, that's hard.
My kids are going to watch this and they know, because I tell them ahead, because they know, and they
You're
know
letting
that
all
I'm
the tricks out.
I know. Well, and they know I practice on them. So, it's not,
Thank you guys so much for being,
millions of parents
pigs.
around the world love you.
Yes.
So.
And you're helping, making a difference.
Yeah, we thank you also.
Sharing your mommy.
So that's, it's that kind of engaging that. But so sitting in the car, what these parents did was sitting in the car saying, remember, what are the rules? What are the most important things? And the first rule is that we love each other. And so even that kind of stuff, so that it starts to help them with that transition from what might be a very, sort of controlling environment, or a very lenient environment, or just a very different environment to transition in. Oh, that's right. I'm here, and these are the rules, and this is how we are in this house, and this is the culture of our house. They won't say that to themselves, but understanding this is what we do here, and what we do over there is different. And when we come back here, this is what we do here. So giving them that time and space,
so to reflect.
Yeah, to reflect. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. There's not always time for that. Our kids are, when we think about our kids dropping everything and running to the next thing, we have to take it back to ourselves. Is that what we do? Are we setting, even though you're running from one thing to the next, and as an adult, you're putting your things away, but what they see is we rush from one thing to another. Yeah. So we have to remember what we're role modeling too.
And that's our household.
Yeah.
And that's why I
told, our house is just go.
Yes.
All the time.
I mean, after school, I'll just give you Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. After school, they know. Lunchbox put away. Put all your belongings away. Let's sit down. Let's do your work. Because we only have, 35 minutes, 40 minutes to do homework, and then it's boom, jujitsu.
Yeah, they get home at 3:15. They have about an hour. Yeah. I get home at around 4. And by 4:25, we're getting ready to leave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're going to jujitsu, and they're not walking in that door until.
And then as soon as we get home, it's time for dinner, time for showers, brush your teeth, go to bed.
Boom, 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 boom. And we're rushing them it is, and I don't want that energy. Right. I don't, and I don't like them being rushed, and I don't like them. I don't like that.
How could we change? I mean, because the things that have to get done have to get done.
Right.
So just the scattered, just go energy. I don't know how we can change that.
Well, and I think it's a bit of the nature of our lives. We have some control over that, but I think it's always that, I always say it's the cost benefit analysis. Like, they're going to jujitsu. That is important from a developmental standpoint. They learn so much. They learn so much about control, about personal responsibility, as well as about what their bodies can do. Yeah. And what they can do with their bodies, and having control over their emotions and their bodies. So that's incredibly important. So it's not a matter of you cut all the extracurriculars out so you can have time, but it's about where you slow down, taking that time where you slow down, and making sure that that's built into your schedule. And there are going to be days that go off the rails, because we all have them.
Well, and I think that's us having dinner with them.
Right.
We do that every night.
Yeah. And that's a great example of just everybody just takes a breath. Everybody, I will say breath and breathing. It doesn't work for everyone. And I do quite a bit of work in the field of trauma and adverse childhood experiences, and how that impacts adults and how that impacts kids. Breathing doesn't work for everyone, but it is a great tool to use. And let me move this for a second. I brought show and tell.
She brought show and tell.
Now that we were talking about, I was just talking to the kids about this. The other day we were coming back from jiu-jitsu, and we were getting ready to have dinner. And I was telling the kids, I was like, that nowadays, this isn't something that happens in every household. Yeah. I was like, but it's just something that we kind of decided. Like, hey, we sit down and we have dinner every night. We're
a bit old fashioned.
I guess.
But I think it's good. I think it's good.
There's some things that need to remain old fashioned.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it is good. There is a study out of Emory University, and they looked at storytelling, and they looked at that related to resilience. And what they found was, and this is a common theme with resilience, is believing in something bigger than yourself, or seeing yourself as something, as part of something bigger.
Yes.
So it doesn't make it doesn't make those problems seem so big. It doesn't make the challenge seem so big that you can see that there's more to your story. So that's from sharing cultural traditions to family history to whatever it is. And the Emory University study looks specifically at storytelling. And what they found was the majority of the time the stories happened around a family meal. So it kind of goes into that family family time and that slowing down time. It was typically shared by moms and grandmas. And it was typically done like if the child was experiencing a challenge, it was, well, your great-great-grandfather or great-great-grandmother, and this is their story. And so they see that somebody in their family connected to them has been resilient, has gotten through a tough time.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, so it's interesting because I think about that.
I like that.
Yeah, I think about that. And there was one time, I don't even remember how old I was. I don't think I was quite a teenager, but, probably 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, somewhere around there. And this is, the old days when cars locked with, I'm dating myself now, when cars locked with keys and not remotes.
Yeah.
And I just happened to close my fingers in the car door when we had come home from some family outing. And I was the last one out of the car. So everybody was almost in the house. So my dad ran out and unlocked the door. And so we're putting ice on it. And while we're putting ice on it, he told me the story. And he always had these 2 lines on the side of his thumb. And he told me the story of when he got his thumb slammed in the door, but it ended up, just basically not cutting his thumb in half, but it ripped, part of his thumb, and he had to have stitches to put the thumb back up there. And so during that time, what that did, and, with my memory, I'm sitting there, and it, of course, takes your mind off the pain.
Yeah.
But it also is like, okay, I can do this. Somebody that I know did this, I can do this.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So those kinds of stories, build resilience. And we think of, you talk about old fashioned, we try to downplay it because in this society, people look at you like, really?
You got to be modern.
Yeah. But we define modern in some ways that are really hurtful to ourselves as well as, to our families. So we have to just really look at, you got to pick some things that you stick by.
It's weird when you think about it because you want things to be modern, but everything that was old is new again.
Yeah.
Like it just happens. And you hear that growing up and it's like, yeah, you know what? That's going to come back eventually. Yeah. And it seems like it always does.
Yeah. Oh, look at fashion.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
I look at that, how that cycles around and around.
Yeah.
It looks
That's
a little
so cool.
bit different, but it's basically the same. So my little,
I love that.
I got a set of 4 of these, and I want to say it was like $20 on Amazon. So, but basically,
what is it called?
It's a breathing ball.
A breathing ball.
So kids are visual.
Yeah.
And so that helps when we connect that. And it's good for adults too. I'm not going to lie and say I haven't used it, but you just teach them to breathe. Just breathe in, deep breath, and then hold it for a minute and then breathe out. Oh, now I got it stuck.
Right.
That's pretty good. That works for me.
That might work for Joey, yeah.
Yeah, and it takes that focus into like this. And it's something that, is in Joey's room. And when Joey needs it, Joey grabs it, or you can remind him and say,
all right, so I got to get one too.
Do you need a ball? Do you need some ball time? You
Go play with your balls.
Yeah. Go play with your favorite. That's a whole different conversation. That's not what we were here for.
Sorry, I said I was going to keep it tame for this pie, but I just couldn't. I couldn't help it.
That's okay. Yeah. I have boys. I have a boy.
You find that funny?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. We can do boy humor. So,
okay.
Those are just some easy,
awesome.
Easy tricks. And,
yes.
And again, it doesn't work for everyone, but what breathing does, obviously, it gets oxygen into our system. It just slows us down enough to catch some of those emotions. And for kids, we have to remember most of their learning about their emotions happens after, not during.
That makes sense.
Because we all know about fight or flight, and fight or flight is our system that keeps us safe.
Yeah.
And it's an ancient system in our brain, and it will trigger without us even knowing it. And what is perceived as a threat to our system is not necessarily a bully or somebody standing or a barking dog or anything like that. It's simply a frustration.
Yeah.
So if Joey's feeling frustrated because you've told him no about something he really wants to do, his body's going to go into fight or flight. And we talked about the stress response, like the stress response, the NUTS acronym.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I can't remember the S. I was thinking I should have looked
Where's
it up.
the sheet, baby?
So,
it's right there.
The
Can you get it?
Jane
the one
ate?
that,
Yep, it's up
yeah.
there. We have
You're a
it.
sweet dog. So
Our dog
it's anything that puts us into stress, into a stress response. And there's a woman, Jean Clinton, and I saw a video of hers. And so it's anything that's novel. So anything that's new. So even good stuff that's new puts us into a stress response, right?
Yes.
Because it alters, sort of how we're looking at things, and how, it's not status quo. Our body and our brain likes to stay in the status quo.
Right.
So the U is anything that's...
Try to read that.
I know.
It says nuts.
Unpredictable.
Nuts.
So
Yeah.
anything that's like we didn't expect. Okay. So we're going along our day. Kids are going along their day, and something has happened that's changed the schedule in the house. But he was at school, he comes home, and in his mind, I'm coming home, I'm going to chill out, I'm going to go play with my friends.
That happens to me.
Yeah, and that's his, and it's like, come on, get your lunch taken care of, put your stuff away, get your shoes on, we got to go do this.
Change of plans. Let's go.
Yeah, and it's like, that's our response, right?
Yeah.
And so then the threat to ego, and again, that's a threat to ourselves, to, again, that status quo. So it's not our ego as in, like, I think I'm the greatest thing and somebody's trying to put me down, although that can be it too, but it's a threat to our sense of self. And then the S, what is the S? Sense of loss.
Yep.
There we go.
Sense of
loss.
Or control. Or control.
Yeah. So
Okay.
Joey comes home, and now I've lost all of my playtime. And again, kids, especially kids that are passionate and feisty, I have lost my playtime for the entire rest of the week. That could be his reaction.
Totally.
So what
parts because something came up?
Yes, because something came up, and then it's that overreaction,
Yeah,
which is when we think about our stress response, that is a perfectly normal, understandable response to a change in our status quo.
Yeah.
Good or bad. You guys were talking about moving a lot. Moving creates a lot of stress, even if it's moving for a good thing. You are out of your element. You have to find, I don't know if you've moved, I've moved, you got to find a different grocery store that you like. You've got to find a Target that you like.
It's all
you
new.
got to figure out how to get to and from work again, all of those kinds of things.
It's change.
Yeah.
And change
Absolutely.
for a child. I mean, change is difficult for an adult. So imagine what
Yeah.
your child is going through,
Right.
and they have
Absolutely.
bigger imaginations. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, just now what you're talking about how, I think we were talking about mindfulness and like the stuff, our, for example, like our Monday and Tuesday, we have jujitsu. It's like just busy nonstop. Right. But the mindfulness part comes in as like, there's nothing that you can do about the things that we have to do.
Right.
But the energy doesn't have to be like, all right, let's go here, go there,
Right.
go do this,
Yes.
put that down.
Yes.
Let's, it could just be like, all right, we got to get it
Yes.
done.
Yeah.
Let's
Come on, baby.
let's go up and get dressed.
Yep.
Yep.
We got to
Yep.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But without the agitation and
Right.
just,
And identifying like why for us as adults, because we can, with our brains where they are, taking a step back and going, why am I getting so, and it could be, it could be like something in our childhood. Being late was the worst thing ever. It could be a sense of, I don't want to be perceived as that parent that's always coming in late.
Yeah.
So we have to kind of check ourselves, like, why are we creating this drama?
yes.
So, and so we've got to check a little bit of why is it that it's so important? Now, of course, it's important to be on time for things. Absolutely. It's important to,
But why am I
keep your-
going over the top?
right.
Why
Keep
am
your
I-
commitments
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. And that's why I say, oh my gosh, my kids and I just watched on, if you have Netflix, Tom Papa, I think
The
it's
comedian,
PA. Yes. Oh my gosh. She's got a new one on there called You're Doing Great. And the whole first part is talking about how we get so stressed out about exercise, about all this stuff. You're doing great. You know, we've evolved. We have everything that we need. We're supposed to be fat. You know, we're supposed to be a little, because now we live in abundance. You know, 100 years ago, they were, you know,
they were supposed to be like that. Yeah.
You know,
because
it's like back in the, 1919, they didn't have what we have. So they're foraging. They're trying to make their way.
Yeah.
If the crops don't grow, they starve. If the crops don't grow, we just go to a different store.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like,
you know what? He's friends with Joe Rogan. He was just on his podcast talking about it.
Oh my gosh, he's so fun. But I love this because it was so great to like,
gotta watch
you're
that.
doing great.
Yes.
And that's what it's like for me. Since the time we watched that, there have been a million things where I'm like, and then it's like, you're doing great.
You're doing great.
You're okay. And what is, because it's a lot of that. And in parenting is so personal.
Yeah.
And we often, and this is kind of, for me, was a big learning for me, is we don't often take the time to take a step back and say, what kind of parent do I want to be? What are the values, the top 1 or 2 values I want my kids to have?
Yeah.
And how do I role model those, but also teach them explicitly by talking about trust, for example, talking about being trustworthy. Being trustworthy means you do what you say you'll do.
Yeah.
So when when we say, if you don't do this, then this will happen. This will be the consequence. And they don't do this, and we don't follow through with the consequence. That's a breaking of a trust.
That's like with Audrey when, hey, did you go brush your teeth? Yeah. Well, no. You know?
Yeah, that just happened.
Like yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's, thank you for telling me the truth. Please go brush your teeth.
Yeah.
Because if they lie to you, but then on their own, or you ask them, because this happens in my house still to this day. Did you brush your teeth? Yes. Did you really brush your teeth? No.
That's what happened.
Thank you for telling me the truth. Please go brush your teeth.
Yeah.
That's good.
And then it's like explaining like, hey, you don't want to be the person that when you say something, people don't believe what you say because... You know, from time to time, you may tell a lie or you don't want to tell the truth, you know?
I love what you had mentioned about when we're in a situation and we are getting upset about something, that it has to do with something that maybe we've gone through as a child or how we were taught. And I talk about the self-awareness onion, pulling back the onions. Yeah. And the more you come to realize or become aware of what happened and where those triggers came from, the more you cry, the more you the more you peel back, you know. But that's something that him and I have been working on, just being more present and being more aware of why are we getting upset, why are we getting angry, you know. And
when you take that, and sometimes it's for a really good reason, but taking that moment, and sometimes for us, especially when we're talking about parenting, because it is so very personal, that sometimes that awareness comes after something's happened. Yeah. And like I said in the class, our kids give us the wonderful opportunity to practice our parenting skills over and over and over again. So we always have an opportunity to get it right. And it's okay to apologize to your kids.
Yeah.
I get a lot of parents.
That is a really good point. Yeah. I've done that a few times where I'm just like, I messed up. Yeah. I'm sorry.
I got it wrong. Yeah. And for me, honestly, it's yelling. I am the worst. I am the absolute worst. When I get stressed, it's like, just do it because I said so. I do not want to have it. But I've set it up because I've had those conversations when I've been in my best parenting mode. And so I've often had to go back and say, I am really sorry that I yelled at you.
That's actually,
that was uncalled for. I'm stressed out and that's not your fault. But also, not using that apology as an excuse not to enforce a consequence if it's needed. So if they've done something that warrants some consequence, you can still apologize and say, I didn't handle that great. I'm sorry I yelled at you. But then being able to say, this is the rule you broke and this is the consequence. We could have had that. We could have enforced that, or we could have talked about that in a better way.
That reminds me of when you said something about, what was it? It was like your emotions are correct.
Yes.
Your feelings are correct. Yes. Your behavior
Correct.
was not right. It was something like that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Your emotions and your feelings are always okay because they're yours, and they're
but
a
your
part of who you
behaviors
are.
and your actions
are your choice.
were not okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
And so, but again, we have to remember with our kids, we want to lay this foundation. We want to create that connection between their executive function center and their emotion brain, so that they start to build that strong connection. But it takes until the mid to late 20s before that brain development spurt in the prefrontal cortex is really sort of evening out. I mean, our brains, we can always learn. From the time we're born to the time we are no longer in our physical bodies, our brains can always change. It's a little harder later, a little easier earlier, a little easier earlier, but it's always possible. So I always hate to say, brain development's done when you're in your late 20s, but lots of practice. They need lots of practice and lots of support from us to connect those dots for them, not to tell them what to do, but to say, what can you do to pause? How can you pause when you feel that, and getting down to what does your body feel?
Yep.
And again, with Joey, after the blow up, after he's calmed down, being able to say, do you feel like you're ready to talk about it? And giving him the option to say, no, I don't want to talk about it now. And sometimes it's 24 hours. So when we have that fight or flight response, our bodies do a great job keeping us protected. Okay. Yeah. So their adrenaline and cortisol get released, and it takes a while for that stuff to work out of our bodies.
That's so crazy.
And so giving him that space and saying, we don't have to talk about it now. We don't have to talk about it tonight, but we do have to talk about it. And even setting an appointment, putting it on a sticky note or writing it on a whiteboard and saying, tomorrow when we don't have jujitsu,
or when we're sitting at
dinner. Yeah. Because
maybe.
But
or
it's
after dinner.
Yeah. It's a great conversation for all four of you to have, to talk about, not pointing out, Joey, this is what you did and this is what you should have done, but let's talk about how emotions can make us angry.
Yeah. And
let's talk about what we can do as a family. Like, how can we set up a code word or a signal that says, I'm starting to, or having a conversation, where do you feel, when you get angry, where do you feel it? For me, I feel my cheeks get really hot.
Mm-hmm.
Man, it always comes back, the Jocko book. I don't know if you've heard of the Jocko Willink.
No, I heard you reference it on
There's so many lessons. I mean, it's so crazy because the dude's like a giant Jack Navy SEAL jiu-jitsu black belt, but the lessons that they teach in that book are, I mean, that's why he wrote the books, is because he had kids. And he was like, man, I'm so good with leadership and dealing with people at work and in the Navy SEALs. And he's like, but my kids. Yeah. So he started trying to figure that out, and he ended up doing some techniques. But what he was talking about was the warning signs. He's like, when you start clenching your fists, when you start feeling yourself getting hot, he's like, those are the red flags that you're about to lose control of your emotions. Yeah.
Yeah. And what do we do? What do we help our kids do when they start to, and remembering that you can talk about those signals and you can talk about them over and over, but it's going to take them a long time.
Yeah.
It's going to take them, but I will tell you, I see the fruits of our labor with our daughter, with her passionate personality. She doesn't really still like the fact that she has these really big emotions, but she's starting more and more, she can start to recognize them and to, do some things that help.
So when does all this start? Let's talk about, the younger years, because there's some people that are watching that may have younger children. So let's talk about the younger years, because I know that you were saying that the brain development between newborn and 5, yes. I believe.
And you got it right.
Did I? 90%. I was going to ask. Okay.
Yeah, 90%.
I know you.
I was like, this sounds wrong.
It's not. It's not. And I heard a term recently. There's an online class that I'm taking, and they're talking about the fetus outside the womb from a brain development standpoint, because they come out and they come out of, and maybe physically they're ready to leave the womb, but from a brain development standpoint, they need a lot of help from their primary caregivers with this whole concept of regulation and self-regulation. So when we have a baby, we know we keep their head covered, we keep their feet covered, we help keep them warm, because they can't say, I'm a little chilly over here. Yeah. Can you put another blanket on? But that's the same with emotions. We need like when they need to eat, we need to upregulate them so they have enough energy to be able to eat, because for an infant, it's a lot of energy to eat. Yeah. Which is why they fall asleep right afterwards. And then, when they're crying, it's figuring out the cries, right? Are they wet? Are they hungry? Do they just need attention? Sometimes they just need to expend energy, and so you just need to be there with them.
They don't know how to do it.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes it is crying. But it's the physical presence of an adult that will help them them be able to soothe.
So that's when the security, like the love, like I think you had brought up, like children that stay in the same bed with you have more confidence or feel more safe or something like that. Yeah,
that was from a book, Tribe, by Sebastian Unger. And he was talking about that, like how back in the day, I mean, before we were living in houses and like our physical bodies haven't changed as much over the last 10,000 years or whatever. But he was saying back in the day when we used to be in tribes or whatever, that the kids would sleep with the parents. Like that's where they would get their sense of security. And how other animals, when they're born, they can get up and they can run around. And they're already starting to get away from predators and things are chasing them. Like for us, the way we have evolved is like, well, we have to be with our parents for years.
Right.
And our parents are, so imagine being a tiny baby.
Yeah.
And then you're just put into another room by yourself.
Right.
So they were saying that the development is better.
And the co-sleeping issue, everybody's got an opinion. But in reality, what we have to remember is even though those little tiny infants are completely dependent on us, they have their own likes and dislikes. They have their own preferences.
So true.
So and I will tell you, I wanted to co-sleep with my kids just for my own.
You hear that a lot.
My own, like I don't have to get up in the middle of the night. Our daughter has always been an independent sleeper. Always. And we kept her.
That's like our son, yeah.
Yeah, we kept her. She would not sleep in the bed with us. So we had, the co-sleeper, which was the bassinet that has so she could sleep near us. She could hear us and the physical presence was there. But she wasn't in the bed with us.
That's kind of like a puppy. Like when we train our puppy, we put the crate right on the night table so that if she starts crying, I would just stick my fingers through the little crate and she could lick it and then she would just go back to sleep.
Right.
Yeah, because our daughter is fine and our kids were sleeping, in their own,
We didn't do that. I mean, it makes sense. Like they were sleeping by themselves early.
They're fine.
Yeah. Well, and it's like having like a mobile over their crib.
Yeah.
For some babies, that's very relaxing. For some babies, that's very agitating. Just like for us, like scratchy, scratchy material.
Yes.
For some of us, we can't wear the scratchy material.
No, that's Joey. Yeah.
You know what?
My son drives me, but if there's a loose string in his sock, guess what? That morning is not like he just goes ballistic. Right. So I'm so glad you brought that up. What do we do with that?
I was going to say the best invention ever was tagless T-shirts in my household.
Yeah.
So, because every shirt that I bought for my kids we had to cut the tag out. Yeah. Had to cut the tag out. It was too much.
His is with his socks and his shoes.
Yeah.
But he loves and he will go ballistic. He'll go bananas. He gets really upset.
But when he finds something that he likes, he loves it.
Yeah. So my thing is as we talked a bit about the window of tolerance, right? So for Joey, if he's got a sock that doesn't feel right, his window of tolerance is smaller.
Oh,
because that physical thing is important. So that's where, I have so many people, parents, teachers that say they got to toughen up. That's not the way they toughen up. So if you have to go out and buy special socks, Buy special socks.
Really?
I'm
like, boy, you better put that sock on right now.
You know what I used to wear when I was a little kid?
I had no socks.
I walked to school barefoot both ways in the blazing Arizona sun.
He's like, I had the same pair. I had 31 pairs of Christmas underwear. I used to wear them in July because they were on sale.
Yep,
you know?
exactly.
You don't get a choice.
Well, and it's different than what I'm going to call, and hopefully this doesn't come through as judgment, but a vanity choice versus truly a comfort choice.
Yeah.
So
and you
if
can tell
it's
the difference.
if it's I have to be decked out in designer wear, nah.
Not so much.
Yeah, not so much. Until they can foot the bill.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you want to buy designer stuff, you've got your wallet, you got your money, you go for it.
Yeah, we're all about that.
Yeah. So, but in terms of that understanding, like if he's going ballistic over his socks, that's important. That's important.
Yeah.
So figuring out what he needs, what is it that he needs to be able to regulate, that's a physical comfort thing. So regulate that part and giving him as much, like if it's just a stray string, I'm going to put the scissors here. This is where you find the scissors when you need to take care, and, recognize that he's still a 9-year-old boy. So he may cut the sock and you have to get a new sock.
Yeah.
But allow him to do it.
Yeah. Give him the control.
Let him fix it.
Yeah. The control, because then he says, when I am out of regulation, when I am having, whether it's a sock, whether it's things not going as planned, whether it's being told no, when he gets nuts, I know I have some control. I have the power to fix it for myself.
I did a boo-boo the other day.
No,
because he was putting on his pants and I loosened them because they were fitting a little tight, but I loosened them a little too much.
Yeah.
So when he put them on, he's like, Mom, these are too big. Like he was about to blow it. And I'm like, it's okay, baby. Here, let me just make them smaller, because he was wearing them. So I did it for him.
Yeah.
But you're right. If I would have said, well, listen. Yeah.
I was going to say, and that's not a boo-boo. Sometimes you just do it. You just like, here, let me help you. And then there's that, again, I'm here to help you, but I'm also here to support you to help yourself so that you feel that level of control. So there's a great quote, and I'm going to butcher it because I never remember it exactly, but it's Maya Angelou. And it's, we did then what we knew, and when we knew better, we did better.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. So it's for again. For every parent out there, we did then what we knew, and when we knew better, we did better. So as we strive to be the best parent for our kids in whatever way they have been given to us, when we know better, we're able to do better. And we're human, and we fall down. And even though we know better, I still yell at my kids. And even though I know better, even though I know what it does to them emotionally and honestly, there's so much research out there from a brain standpoint of what it does. Me yelling at them puts them into fight or flight.
Yeah. So you know what? That is a question that I have. I mean, I think that's a question that everybody has. Like, what does? Because I think every parent can say at some point we've yelled at our kids.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, I can tell you it'll probably happen in the future for me.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's just, I just know, and it's something that we work on. But what does that do to a kid?
Well, it's essentially what it does. It's a threat.
You said it puts them into fight or flight.
It's a threat. You're yelling at them. Some kids will shut down. Some kids will fight back. But whatever happens, it puts a reaction into them. Okay.
Yeah. And
it does, I hate to say this, but it impacts your relationship with them. Either this much or this, it depends on your reaction afterwards. So when you yell at your kid and you step back and you go, oh, geez, I did it again. Because the goal is not to eliminate yelling. It's just reducing it every day. Yeah. Giving yourself permission to take a step back, because the yelling happens when you're in your fight or flight response. You're in your stress response system, right? So we feel like sometimes as parents, we're supposed to have the answer immediately. Like
that's
we're
when
supposed
the mindfulness comes in.
Yeah, we're supposed to reward or consequent, reward good behavior or consequent negative behavior, because for some reason, I think a lot of parents have gotten it in their mind, if you don't give consequences right away, they're going to forget the lesson. But think of their brain capacity. If you tell your kids today, on Saturday, on Friday, we're going to go get ice cream, whatever their favorite thing to do is. We're going to go get ice cream. On Friday, They're going to wake up Friday morning.
They're not going to leave you alone.
They are not going to forget that you told them on Friday.
Yeah, that's true.
That motivation is, it's something I want to do. It's something I've been promised. It's something I know that we will do.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's less motivation for the negative stuff. But you taking even up to a day and being able to communicate, right now what's happening is not okay. I need to calm myself down because I can't deal with this right now in my best brain, in the best way for both of us. So tomorrow night at dinner, we're going to talk about it.
Okay. Yeah.
So that gives, and again, you have to play with some of this stuff because you got to figure out how your kids react to it. So for some kids, that sends them over the edge because the stress of not knowing may create, and you won't know that until you've pushed them over the edge. And then you go, okay, maybe a day is too long. Maybe we talk about it tonight at bedtime. So
you have to find
so much of parenting is trial and error too. Is figuring out your kids, figuring out yourself first, figuring out your kids, and how your temperament, how your personalities, how the way you like to do things, matches or conflicts. And then, you find that try to find that sweet spot. And it takes a lot of practice. Kids change because once you find that sweet spot, 6 months, 9 months, a year down the road, that
may not work.
That sweet spot may change.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's, you've taught, like you teach Joey to have control over what he needs and what he doesn't need. And that's going to take a high level of coaching, being alongside him and coaching him. And then he's going to get to the point where he doesn't really need that, but that could be a trigger. Like, I know what to do, back off. And so then you go, okay, now I need to back off that coaching a little bit. So your solution could turn into a trigger, and then you got to kind of figure out how
again.
to,
This is really, really good. Like I think we're going to have to have you back or either continue recording a part 2 because there are so many issues and there's so many questions that are coming to me when it comes to co-parenting. Because
That's
Miguel
Sonia's
it's my mom. Miguel, we have another daughter. I have another daughter through Miguel. And there's a lot to talk about when it comes to that. Yeah. And I know that there's a lot of people, and it's long distance. She lives in Washington. We live here. And difference in
Virginia.
Parenting. And there's a lot of just conflict within the relationship. Like it's just a tough situation. And I know that there are some people out there
they're going
through the same thing. And
well, that's
there's
why
so many questions.
That's why I was asking about this when parents are split up, like the effects.
Yeah.
But
look at the time, like to get into that on a deeper level.
We got a couple questions that we have to get to,
okay.
and the one quick thing that I wanted to know, like with we were talking about kids and stress. Now, jiu-jitsu is something that is stressful. I mean, you're put into very stressful positions. I mean, if you can imagine, you have somebody on top of you trying to choke you or trying to break your arm, or it's just, and for a little kid, like I think one thing that I really got from the class was just to remember that their brains are developing. They're little kids and their brains are developing. So when they're doing something crazy or acting out or whatever, it's like, hey, you have no idea what's going on inside that little head,
right?
But how would something like that play into a kid's development, like jiu-jitsu? Because I know there's a lot of great benefits, but at the same time, it's super stressful.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing, and I think we talked about it in class. There's positive stress.
Yeah.
And every high-performing athlete, soldiers know this as well. There's a level of stress that gets you to optimal performance, right? Where your alertness, you're right on.
Yeah.
All of those things. So stress is not always bad. We need a little bit of stress when we talk about like motivation. We need a little bit of stress sometimes to get us going.
Okay.
So then there's tolerable stress. So tolerable stress is when there's a stressful event that pushes you out of the positive, but there is the presence of supportive adults. And I'll use the example of your sister's kids. So her death put them into like somewhere in between tolerable and toxic stress. The reason that stress is not harmful is the presence of adults. So while they're going through the stress of losing their mother, they have the two of you and other networks that are supporting them to manage and navigate that stress.
Okay.
So when we get to the harmful stress, the toxic stress is the stress that happens in the absence of supportive adults.
So it's like that can
kids
go out of control. And that's what they're feeling.
Well, but for Joey in jiu-jitsu, if he's pinned down, that's a temporary situation. And it's a temporary situation within the environment of a supportive jiu-jitsu
school, and the
coaches, parents. So that is a temporary stress that happens that is probably in that positive range. I would say positive to even tolerable.
So if there's a kid on top of him and there's nobody around, it's happening with nobody, and he knows that he may not get out of this situation.
Right.
That's when it's toxic.
That's when it becomes, well, again, it's the tolerable toxic. You have to look at it within the frame of a supportive adult. So it's not like in that moment, toxic stress is going into his brain and damaging. He's in a stress mode. But if he very quickly is able to get into, kind of downgrade that to like, okay, I maybe the coach let it go a little longer just to see what Joey would do. That stress level might be a little higher, but there's somewhere in his mind, in his brain, that he can trust his coach and he can trust his parents.
Yeah.
So he's got that where it's like treating a wound. Okay. So you get a wound, it hurts, you put medicine on it, you put a Band-Aid on it. So Joey may have a wound, but very quickly there's medicine and Band-Aid on it. So it's healing right away.
So it's okay.
Yeah. So it's not creating any, it's the prolonged stress without the support of somebody. Okay. Or in a situation where, for example, where he goes for jiu-jitsu, that is a place of comfort. He's familiar. He's gotten support there. He's learned skills there. He's been recognized there. He's been disciplined there. All of those things are part of this environment, is a safe environment. And that's the baseline, is the safety. That's the first thing for kids, is that feeling safe, physically, emotionally, all that kind of stuff. So that's so that those kinds of things are positive, because you have that. But if he's in a situation where, again, in the absence, if you guys weren't around for your sister's kids, or they were put in a household that was like, the philosophy is get over it, toughen up,
get it together,
move on. Yeah. I've moved on. You need to move on. Then that's going to create more of that borderline, more of that toxic stress, because they are holding in that trauma and not able to deal with it in positive ways.
I wonder if that was what Adriana was going through there.
Well, and that's why, I talked to the coach. Okay. So, let's, we got my sister wrote in a question, and she wanted to know, how can you tell if your kid is misbehaving and hyper, or if it's actually like a sensory processing issue? Like if it's just hyperactivity, or do they have something going on, like ADHD? Yeah. I think that's what she's asking.
Yeah, that's so hard, because we don't have, it's not like we have a blood test for ADHD. It really is about behavior and what's going on. And there's so many, so much better, I don't know, my English is leaving me now. But we have better tools to use, but it's still not an exact science for ADD and ADHD. And so what we have to do is, there's a gentleman, Dr. Stuart Shanker, and he's out of Canada, and he wrote a book called Self-Regulation. So one of the things he talks about, and we talked about a little bit in the class, is this stress behavior or is it misbehavior? And the difference is they know better. They know what to do, and they're making a choice, a conscious, active choice to do something wrong. And we ascribe that way too often to kids, that this is a misbehavior. I would argue most behaviors are stress behavior. So the first thing for your sister is to look at the potential stressors. When he's acting out, when he seems hyperactive, what are some of the stresses? And I'm a big fan of tracking, because I can't remember anything. Yeah. And our minds do it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If I think my kid is always doing something, then my brain's going to tell me it's always happening.
Yeah.
So for her, I would say when he has an episode, whatever that behavior looks like, take some time, be able to push the pause button and say, what happened before that? What was happening during? Okay. So if something happened before that, and it may be something that happened at school, so she may have to either ask him or, you know, kind of investigate a little bit more. But I always want to say, talk to your pediatrician.
Yeah.
Talk to the pediatrician, let your pediatrician know what's going on. And they can also say, well, it sounds like we might need to do some further testing. We might want to look into it a little bit more, but always start with your pediatrician if you're looking at a potential diagnosis.
Yeah. I don't know. We have one of Audrey's friends has ADD, ADHD. And there's like, for a little bit there, we were wondering, I mean, it's just being parents and like seeing our kids. And like you said, they're going through that development phase. And we're like, what? Maybe she has ADD or whatever. But then when we met her friend, we're like, something's different.
Yeah, but there's a difference. Like, there's a difference.
I know there's probably different levels or a different spectrum of it. But when like we were kind of wondering, I think if you're kind of wondering, if you're not sure, you might be okay. But because with her friend, we're like, something's up.
Right.
Like when he doesn't take his medicine, it's just
but it's her focus. It's not that she's hyperactive. It's her lack of focus. Like she'll read a book like over and over again and still not
I do that.
Be able to explain it. I know so do adults, but like it's more her focus.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
And she's how old?
She's 10.
Yeah. So that's not unusual.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I've had even a book I absolutely love. I'll start reading and all of a sudden something pops into my head.
And you're reading and thinking about that at the same time.
Instead of reading, my eyes are moving and I'm registering there are words on the page, but my brain is going through my to-do list.
Right.
And then I look down and I'm done with the page and I have no idea what I've read.
Right. Yeah.
Kids are no different. And so, and if it's something for school and it's not really enjoyable, you know, there's, you know, that comprehension kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, kids should be unfocused because that's sort of developmentally where they are. You know, so I would say that focus thing, and you are right. It looks a little bit different. There are some common characteristics of kids that have ADD or ADHD, but sometimes it looks a little different than hyperactivity. It looks like impulsivity rather than being hyperactive. It's not being able to control impulses. So you know, you never know. And again, and a lot of things too. Right now, just as we're starting to understand trauma and how trauma impacts, and it could be long-term trauma. Like when we talk about trauma, we think of child abuse and neglect and those kinds of things, living in a violent neighborhood, those sorts of long-term things. But trauma could be, you know, just something, an incident that overwhelms the capacity to cope. And for some kids, they get misdiagnosed with ADD and ADHD because the behavior is actually trauma behavior and trauma-based rather than brain-based.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
You know?
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions?
Yes. So, are you going to play Raise?
Yeah, we're going to play.
Okay, so we'll answer that one.
We'll move into
next.
the questions now.
Okay.
So let's see. This is from Leticia, and she has a teenager, and he's 17 years old. And she's like, how in the world do I get him to take accountability for his actions? For instance, he can't seem to make it on time to his first period. He has no concept of time. LOL. She said he's late for practically everything.
Drop him off 2 hours early.
Yeah,
so that he can
go.
make it. Whenever you're late, drop him off 2 hours early the next day. That way he can't be late.
Right.
Yeah. And that I mean, that concept of time is so, again, it's so abstract for kids. They, you know,
It is.
yeah. Yeah.
Because Joey would be like, okay, Joey, well, we're going to do this maybe in half an hour. And he's like, so like 10 years?
Yeah.
Be like 10
So like
years?
next week then, right?
So like next week. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
and I think, you know, again, we get so wrapped up into consequences, but, and that's, I mean, there is a certain benefit to saying, I don't want to do that because I don't want to experience something bad. But what motivates all of us more is the reward. And so when you're talking with someone that might be time challenged is basically, what does he get if he's on time?
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean, it could be, again, it doesn't have to be monetary or material reward. It could be, making it on time. And, for example, we're going to go out to dinner on Friday night. You get to choose the restaurant.
He's 17, though. I don't know if he still wants to have dinner with his
he
family.
may not. I don't know. That's true. This is true. But if he could get mom to foot the bill at the steakhouse, then, there might be a reward there.
Man, so why can't we just get out the belt? No.
Yeah. Oh, babe, the hell?
Those good old days.
Yes.
Oh, man.
But yeah, it's really, his experience is going to teach him about the value of time and for parents, we get so invested because we don't want our 17-year-old to be a 21-year-old that keeps getting fired from jobs because he can't get there on time.
Right.
So it is just, kind of what do you get if you can figure out your way of getting where you need to be on time.
Like getting him to realize the pros and the cons of being late. And
you know what?
Not only that, but the type of character, how do you want people to see you?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
You know what? There was a time in school that I remember. I was like I've mentioned before, I wasn't a great student, but there was my senior year where I decided, I was like, you know what? I'm going to show everybody. What's up. And I ended up acing everything my senior year. But there was a teacher that I would show up, and maybe the class was close by, but I was like the first person to show up. Mm-hmm. And I would say hi to the teacher every time that I walked in. So he would notice, and he automatically started liking me because I was the first one to show up and be like, hey, mister, whatever, how you doing? And I would sit down and maybe just try and get him to do it for a week. Show up early, be the first one. Say hi to your teacher and see if that has an effect on the relationship with that teacher, because I'm sure the teachers notice.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
And that might be the reward.
Right. And it's how do you, if you're late to everything, there's also that concept of what is the consequence other than a stern look from the teacher? That's maybe not so motivating.
I could deal with that.
Yeah. Being friends with the teacher, I'm not really all that interested in being the friends with the teacher, but so if you're 15 minutes late, what do you have to do to make up those 15 minutes? And it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be at school. It means you were 15 minutes late for class, so at home you're going to do 15 minutes of whatever.
Or ask him, how does the class start? Because if you're 15 minutes late, that's kind of like we've noticed when we're late to something that if we're doing a presentation about something or whatever, that automatically throws your brain into that, like you're saying, the fight or flight.
Yeah,
my mind is going 1,000 miles a minute because I'm like, okay, I'm running late. This red light. What am I gonna talk about first? I'm doing this. I'm doing that. Whereas if I get there a few minutes early, I can settle down and get into what it is that I need to be doing.
Yeah.
So if he has that, agitated, just very active brain when he shows up to class, it's because he was late. So maybe if he doesn't want that, he can try and get there early. But,
well, and with kids, we got to start with the concrete and then go to the abstract because they're not quite at that point yet. Yeah. So starting with that concrete, what are those concrete things? So what do you need to add either in benefit or add as in he's wasting somebody else's time?
Yeah.
Right.
So what do you need to add to put that 15 minutes back? So, and it might be if there's a good relationship and an open communication with the school and whoever that first period teacher is, it's like, what can my son do that equals the amount of time that he was late? So
that's good.
So it's staying after school to help the teacher with something. It's, whatever it might be. Working, homeschool connection is so important. And when kids see that teachers and parents are on the same page, there's a different level of accountability.
Yeah.
But in high school, again, there's that philosophy that parents step back. When from a brain development standpoint, we need to step forward in a different way, than in elementary school, but being active and present. And so again, what do you add? Starting out with first, what do you add? Yeah. Adding those conversations about character. How do you want people to see you?
Yeah.
How do you want to be known in the world? What is, hey, my name's Joe and I'm a guy that's always late and I'm going to waste your time. Is that how you want your name to be known?
Yep.
Let's not call Joe.
True.
Yeah. Let's not call Joe. Joe's always late.
Right.
We don't want him to come with us.
Yeah.
So before we move on to the next question, really quick, you were talking about the pruning of the brain, right? And I think we didn't even get to any of that.
Yeah.
But can you explain that? Because there are some parents, and you said it takes place from 9 to 12?
Well, it signals in puberty. Whenever puberty starts from, I always say from the pharmacy inside your body, from when those chemicals start. So it's around 9, 10, 11, 12, somewhere in that neighborhood, our bodies start to switch into basically our next growth phase going into adolescence.
Yeah.
And so our brains are a use it or lose it enterprise. So when you use those synapses, whatever you use gets stronger. Whatever you don't use sort of prunes away. And it's kind of, think about that with muscles. If you were to sit for a week, when you stand up, it'd be a little hard to walk.
Yeah.
Right. So the brain's kind of the same way.
Okay.
So those synapses,
You're okay.
those synapses, they build on that experience. The more they fire together, the stronger they're wired together.
Okay.
And the myelination is this sheath that is over those synapses, over those nerves. And so when that gets stronger, it's like, it's like dial up versus DSL.
Yeah.
Okay. So it strengthens that so that communication happens quicker back and forth.
Yeah.
So you
They're
might
able
have
to process faster.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I use the example of language in the class. So if you are in a bilingual household, there's going to be whatever those nerve endings are, that's going to fire and wire more strongly than if you hear only one language. Now, it doesn't mean somewhere later in your life you can't learn a second language, but it's going to, like your legs after sitting for a week, it's going to take a while to get those things fired up.
What are some books that you would recommend for those that are raising a child, around that age, that can help them to understand and help them to be able to parent the best that they can?
Right.
What books?
I think any of Dan Siegel's books,
Yeah.
he's written a lot for teenagers. He's started talking about in the mind sight exercises, which a big one of those is mindfulness, is helping our teens recognize their emotions and recognize who they are in the world. Start to put those together. That, being late is one of those examples, like, who am I in the world? Who do people see me? Not that I want to please people, but I want to put myself forward. What are the things that are important to me?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So Dan Siegel,
yeah.
if you guys are going to purchase any books,
Yes.
definitely go to oppositesattractpod.com. Click on the support the show link at the top and it'll take you to our Amazon link. And if you purchase the books through our Amazon link, it also helps out the show.
Awesome.
And you'll also see Trust Inc. there. Trust
Yes.
INK USA.
And Trust Inc. is a nationwide mobile notary agency. So we do a lot of work with law firms, title companies, and individuals as well. So if you have a document that needs to be notarized, look us up. We are also independent associates with Legal Shield. And what Legal Shield does is we give you access to attorneys at the palm of your hand for a small monthly subscription. And if you own a business and you're needing some, help with debt collection letters, anything like that, we do have.
There's business services also.
We have business services as well.
So that's trustinkUSA.com and oppositesattractpod.com. So yeah, you can help us out by clicking through the links. What was that, real quick? We got to get into the last few questions, but there was a video by Dan Siegel. Mm-hmm. It was the whiteboard one where they talk about the pruning. What, do you remember the name of that video?
It's the adolescent brain.
The adolescent brain.
Yeah.
There was that, and there was the hand brain model or something like that.
Yeah.
Those two videos, if you guys haven't seen them, you got to check them out. They're really good videos.
Yep.
My cousin Miguel, like me, he asked, I guess maybe for all of us, what are some life lessons that we haven't taught our kids yet? And I think
That's a
at least
huge
for
question.
us, I think we've tried to teach them all the life lessons, but it's when you're a parent, it's just going
ongoing.
over
Yes.
the life lessons over
Yeah.
and over and over again in different ways, so that because it just takes years, like you're saying, it takes years of going through it, them reacting a certain way, and us figuring out, okay, well, they didn't they didn't get that. So we got to figure out another way to teach them.
Yeah.
So,
and sometimes they get it. We just don't know they got it until later.
Yeah.
It is kind of a wait and see proposition with raising kids.
Yeah.
And see, what they learn. And I always say, start with small things. In parenting, we think of everything we haven't done.
Yeah.
I had my son's in his first year of college. So it was earlier than this, fall of last year, when he started his senior year. And I realized, oh my gosh, he's going to be in college. And at some point, hopefully, he will move out of the house.
Yeah.
And I haven't taught him anything. I've got like 9 months to teach him. And I had this real panic, like I haven't taught him anything. And so, of course, I had to, practice my own breathing exercises and I, reality check. And thankfully,
she's like,
yeah. No, thankfully, I have a husband who was like, chill out. It's going to be okay. And you've taught them both by your example as well as explicitly more than you think you have. But if you're feeling that, like what life lessons or what things have I not taught, start with one thing. When we look at change and when we look at our brains, if you research multitasking, it is so bad for our brains.
I've learned that.
And we do that all the time.
I used to pride myself on that.
Yeah. There is, it's Dominican University, and I'm blanking on the woman's name that did the research, but looking at goal achievement and the decrease in goal achievement the more you add, as well as who you communicate. So if you write down a goal, that's going to get you. If you think about a goal, you're less likely. If you write it down, you're more likely. If you write it down and you tell someone and you ask that person to hold you accountable, it like jumps up to something
We've
like
talked about 70%. That before,
Yeah. So I always say start small. Don't start with everything. Start with the one value that you want your kids. I always use this analogy in my parenting classes. If your child was to go out into the world tomorrow, theoretically tomorrow they are starting their life journey, what is the most important thing you would pack in their suitcase?
Wow.
And then start teaching to them.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, the two lessons that I've always gone back to, and they're like the earliest ones, is riding a bike and tying their shoes.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to learning something new, like especially with Joey, because of his temper, and he remembers like he would get mad. I'm not going to get this. I'm never going to be able to ride a bike. I can't do this. And then we just, come on, let's go. Get back on, and he'd be angry riding the bike.
Yeah.
But I'm like, dude, you remember you said this is just like riding a bike. This is just like tying your shoes. You couldn't do it at first. We had to keep working, and then eventually you got it. And it's like that, like when we're doing math homework, I can't get it. I can't do it. It's like, hey, you remember when you were riding your bike?
Yeah.
You didn't think you could do it. And we kept practicing, and then what happened?
Yeah.
You learned how to ride the bike.
Right.
So that's just something that as a parent, like I always go back to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great point because again, from a brain development standpoint, kids have a hard time connecting the past to the present. So he can sit there and say, I'm never going to get this math problem. He is not able to connect all the successes he's had through struggle.
Yeah.
So we as parents have to do that. Remember that time when you thought you were going to give up and you didn't, and look what happened. And if you've got, I don't know if Joey ever did, I would do that with my daughter, and it would say, she would tell me the 7 ways that it was different and how it would never happen. But she would. Yeah. So, but it is that connecting that, you can do it. You have persistence, you have perseverance, you have all the talent that you need. Just help your brain calm down and let all of those smart brain cells start kicking in, and they will.
That's really good.
Do you have any other questions?
Ray's question.
Okay, so let's get into our voicemail questions. We only have 2, so
okay.
Here we go.
Hey, Sonja. Hey, Miguel. Really like the show. You guys are doing great work. Enjoying it. Hey, my question is this. Currently, I'm in a blended family.
A blended
family. We all know what that means. We have a 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 14-year-old. And 10-year-old, for the past 9 months, they've adjusted with me and a new situation. The trouble is the 14-year-old. What is the best advice or any kind of
literature
reaches 14-year-old I know he's a preteen. I'm being very patient. I listen. I'm trying to guide him, teach him responsibility, so on and so forth. Just trying to do all the right steps. And we're also a Christian family, so any help, any advice, I would greatly appreciate it. Again, this is Ray Rodriguez calling from Orlando, Florida.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank
And
you,
God bless.
Ray. Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Ray.
Ray.
So, you know,
it cut out a couple times.
Yeah.
But
So those of you that are going to call in, don't use your speakerphone.
yeah, talk direct. No
Yeah.
speakerphone or Bluetooth. Talk directly
Yeah.
into the phone, please.
But I called him because he's a good friend of mine.
Okay.
And so he recently engaged, and she has 3 boys. And so it's a blended family. The 8 and 10-year-old have adjusted very well to him. The 14-year-old is the one that he's a bit concerned. He's like, I just keep doing and doing and doing, and it's never enough for him. It's never good enough.
Right.
You know, so he would like some advice on that, and maybe some books or literature that, you know, would help him out.
Okay. Well, thank you for calling, Ray, and you are doing great. Because with 14-year-olds, and again, there's so much going on for that 14-year-old.
Yeah.
And if biological dad is still in the picture, there's a whole bunch of loyalty issues that come in. Like if I like Ray, that kids
It's betraying
sometimes
his dad.
Well, again, kids play that zero-sum game. If I get this, or if I don't get this, or somebody else gets this, I don't get this. So they're from a brain development standpoint, they have to learn that everybody can win. Our society doesn't promote that very often.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah.
That just made me think like jujitsu. That's why one gets angry when the other one gets a stripe, because they're like, well, if they got one, I'm not getting one.
Right.
You know?
Right. But there's also benefit in that, in competition, in learning to deal with defeat, and learning to trust yourself that today was just not my best day. It doesn't mean I'm never going to do it. Today was just not my best day.
Yeah.
You know, and we see that in sports all the time, you know, where you have a team that's supposed to win and they don't.
Yeah.
And, you know, cheating and sign stealing aside, it's sometimes they just don't have all the pieces aren't working together.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think for Ray, just being present, books don't come off the top of my head, but I'll definitely kind of think about it and send some stuff to Sonja and Miguel.
There is one that I can think of, Gary Chapman,
Yeah.
Blended Families.
Oh, yeah.
Gary Chapman, when we went to his event, he talked about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. So I think just being present, you know, you said that you're a Christian family. That's great because there's that faith-based and the value-based there. And rather than doing for him, maybe focusing on being there, which is tough for men because men are generally doers. One of the things is, you know, there's a reason that women have support groups and men go out and play basketball together. Because active, just from a male brain standpoint, those things you're able to deal with stuff through activity and through guy activity.
Yeah.
Where we're okay sitting around talking about our problems and sharing and all of that kind of stuff. So I think just it's hard to slow down when you're feeling stressed, and you really, especially when you've got 2 relationships that are going really great and your expectation is everybody's the same and we're all going to get on board together. So I think just keep doing what you're doing, be present, be there, be consistent, and just let him come to you in his way.
Yeah.
And
I think
he will.
when you pay attention to what's going on, you'll be able to tell if he's just not into it right then and there. And then it's like, okay, you know, you can kind of come around and try. And if he's not feeling it, then back off a little bit.
Yeah.
And also to pay attention and try and find out things that he's really interested in, and maybe try to bond with him over something that he's really interested in. But being a teenager, he just may not, you know, just keep trying.
Yeah. And just
not
asking,
overpowering. Yeah.
Right. Asking questions, you know, as simple as, who'd you sit with at lunch today? You know, what's on your podcast list? What's on your playlist? What kind of
what music do you like? Yeah.
Tell me about the music. What does that music say to you? What do you learn from that music? And it's also, being able to, I don't want to assume, and I don't want to always say it's about the competition. Like if I like you, then I'm betraying my dad. But if you feel like after, maybe conversations, or if you feel like that is valid, have an honest conversation. He's 14. Have an honest, I'm not trying to be your dad. I'm an important person in your life. I want to be here for you. And I don't want to be your friend because I'm your parent. You didn't get to choose me, but I'm your parent. I'm here for you. I love you. And I'm not trying to take anybody's place.
I like that.
And also if his dad is doing well also, like if he's a good dad, let him know like, hey, your dad's great. And I would never,
Right.
So, yeah.
And that's great advice.
So let's, we got one more question and it was an anonymous caller. So we'll play that now.
Hi, good morning. I'm just calling in. I have a couple of questions. Been dealing with some stressful things with my daughter the last several months. A lot of bullying at school, different life circumstances that's come about. Some things with some close friends. Trying to figure out the lack of coping skills for my daughter, and I mean honestly it seems like today's youth. The lack of coping skills, to figure out how to help her. Obviously, when I was her age, things were, you had some of the same challenges, but it seems like it was much different than it is now. I'm not sure if it's lack of FaceTime, in-person socialization with friends, not knowing how to cope or how to have conversations because of phones and devices. I'm not sure. So I would love some insight into, helping her develop coping skills and things like that. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yeah.
So her daughter is 12.
Okay. And the bullying piece and the coping skills. I mean, she brings up, this lack of coping skills. And, again, when we look at where they are and what they don't and can't really have they can dream about the future when I'm in college, when I do this, I'm, whatever your passion is, when, I'm a movie star, when I'm, rocking YouTube and I've got, thousands and millions of followers, they can dream. But the concrete is so hard. So when we think about, I don't know if the bullying is happening in person, if it's happening at school, in the neighborhood, social media,
all of it.
Yeah, you want to limit that exposure to that as much as you can. Working with the school, absolutely. But even as adults, we don't have good skills for dealing with bullying.
Yeah.
That's just the reality. And so helping her understand that the person bullying, what they're doing, what they're saying says more about them rather than her.
Yeah.
At 12, it's so hard because you want to be liked, you want to be accepted. You're in this huge transition between middle school and high school.
Your body's changing.
Your body's
brain
changing.
is changing.
Yeah. You're getting interested in relationships, both friendship as well as romantic relationships. And there aren't really a lot of good examples for them out there in terms of, celebrities and sports figures. And there are some, but
that's where we come in.
Yes, absolutely. And so
not me, I'm not saying me, I'm saying you, you guys out there, the parents.
Yeah. Parents, all of us too. Yeah. So, not knowing, the specifics, but I say, definitely the getting the school involved so that they're aware of the situation, but accepting that they may not deal with it in a way that is beneficial. And it's just staying close to your daughter, whatever that coping skill you think they're lacking. Now, again, personality wise, just talking about emotions, helping her to think about and role model and practice. So is it happening at school at lunchtime? So let's talk about what can you say? What can you do? where can you go? Where is your support system? If the school doesn't have a good way to address bullying, what teacher, what confidant do you have at school that you can go in that room, that you can avoid that situation?
Yeah.
And just, again, that practicing, like, not an aggressive response to a bully, but an assertive, like asserting my power, my personal power, not power over, but my power within. If it's things that the bully is saying, one of the things that we know that is the best antidote to bullying now through the research is empathy. Yes. Because bullying comes from a place of otherness. If I can look at you and say, you're not a person, I don't connect with you, I don't recognize you as a person, it's easier for me. And that's why it's so easy to bully on social media. It's easier for me to not think of you as a human, because it's easier for me to be awful to you if I don't think of you as a human.
Yeah. There's the second Jocko Kids book. He talks about, so in the first Jocko book, the kid's getting picked on and bullied, and he ends up going to jiu-jitsu and learning jiu-jitsu. In the second book, now he knows jiu-jitsu, but he's getting picked on by a kid differently. This kid is messing with him mentally. Like, he keeps saying stuff, and right when he's about to snap, he goes to the teacher, or something happens where because he's thinking, I know jiu-jitsu, I'm just going to beat this kid up.
Right.
But then the kid always kind of weasels his way out and just keeps torturing him mentally. Now, I think, jiu-jitsu, for somebody, physical bullying, I think jiu-jitsu is great as far as martial arts go. It also gives the kids confidence. Mm-hmm. But as far as mental bullying, one of the things they talk about in the kids' book is he's like, you have to understand that the reason that the kid is saying these things, it doesn't have anything to do with you.
No.
The kid is going through something.
Yes.
So in the book, he's telling him, he's like, find out, like, because he's a Navy SEAL, he's like, do some reconnaissance. Find out what's up with this kid. Right. Why is he doing and saying these things to you? Understand that it's not about you. It's about him.
Yeah.
And then he finds out that the kid goes home and he hangs out some mechanic shop, and he doesn't really have parents, really. He goes home and nobody's there, and he has no support. He's by himself all day. And he's like, maybe that's why he's angry. Yeah. You have all these clothes. He brings his food in a shopping bag. He has a ripped up backpack. He's been wearing the same pair of jeans for 4 days with holes in them. And he's like, that's why he picks on you, So, I think a way is letting them understand, or talking, to your daughter and letting her know that they're picking on you because of what they have going on. Right. Understand that it doesn't have anything to do with you.
It still impacts you. And the other thing is those positive social relationships that she has.
Yeah.
So if she has a good friend or a best friend.
Which she does.
Yeah. And a way to help her is to encourage and build up that relationship. So make sure that you're giving her lots of time to hang out with people that support her, or again, that best friend, inviting that best friend over, having her come over, have them do things together, because then that gives her that positive shield, if you will. It still hurts when somebody bullies you.
Yeah. So have some positive associations in her life, and allow her a little more time.
Right.
With those.
And focusing more on building those positive relationship skills that she will have with the give and take of a friendship.
Yeah.
Versus how do you avoid it? I mean, they're equally important. I don't want to say, just don't address the bullying, just address the relationship, but hand in hand, those coping skills of being able to stand up for yourself in assertive, not aggressive or demeaning ways, telling the bully that, calling the bully names at the same time they're calling you names, that doesn't work, because that just increases your stress and anger. But, that hand in hand of promoting those positive relationships, being there for her, and practicing empathy ourselves. Yeah. So practicing, rather than jumping in and telling her what she should do or what she might be doing wrong, like, just don't even look at the posts on Facebook, but taking the it's hard when people say awful things to you. It's hard when someone makes you feel like you're less than. Taking that perspective rather than jumping into fix, just being able to say, I'm here with you. It sucks. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'll sit in this place with you for a little while, and I'm here to listen.
Yeah.
How do you feel about social media?
That is, I was gonna say it's almost time to go, but
Yeah.
if we didn't ask this question, I know a lot of people would be wondering, what age should kids maybe start social media?
35?
Yes.
That's what we're thinking.
Yes.
Well, here's the thing.
Having a phone.
Social media is here to stay. It's not going away. It's probably not going to get regulated any more than it currently is. So there's the two sides of it. You know, understanding that kids are going to want to go on social media because it is a way. It's kind of like going down, you know, again, dating myself. I grew up in a very small town, and the place everybody hung out was actually a gas station.
Yeah.
You know, so you go down the gas station, you hang out, right? And so social media is the gas station. It's where people hang out and socialize.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's good things and bad things, and teaching our kids now how to handle that is just as important as, you know, building those relationship skills. I mean, it's part of like, how are you an appropriate person? How are you a good person in this world? And that includes social media. You know, I will confess to you, our daughter had a phone much earlier than I wanted her to have a phone, but we were going on a family vacation. And from a safety standpoint, we were going on a cruise. Yeah. We wanted her to have the phone to be able to communicate so the kids could have some freedom. And it was great because she went to an activity and then she couldn't remember how to get back to the cabin.
Oh, yeah.
So she was able to text us. And so then it was like, what's around you? What are you looking at? Stay put. We're coming right there. And it wasn't a safety issue, but for her, it was the little, and she ended up finding her way back to the cabin. And,
how old was she at the time?
Gosh, I knew you were going to ask me. I want to say it was 5th grade. I think it was 5th grade. So that was much earlier. Yeah. I know so she's got
10.
Yeah, I know she's
10,
got
11,
some friends that don't have cell phones, and she's in 8th grade now. And so I think it's a parent personal choice. Again, if you let them get on social media, knock on wood, my kids don't have a lot of interest in social media.
That's good.
So we haven't, you know, I'm kind of now that I said it out loud, you know, there might be a conversation happening in my future. But yeah, just teaching them how to be responsible with, and for us, it's so hard. And I am monitoring is crazy. And, you know, we had contracts with both of our kids and know their passwords. So we were able to get on. I have, you know, parent controls, but not crazy parent controls because I can't keep up with that.
Yeah.
But, you know, every now and then we have a limit, you know, like when they can go on and when they have to be off. It doesn't always work because there's always that, you know, a little bit of that, you know, catching them when they're still on. And so, you know, trusting them and then just making sure that you set that expectation. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, you know, it's such a personal choice. And I will tell you, if when my kids were little, I had a cell phone and I could park them in the shopping cart and give them a movie, a video to watch while I shop, I am not even going to lie and say I probably would have done it. Yeah. Because grocery store, I remember when they were younger, the best gift ever was going grocery shopping without kids. Because you could get it done.
No, totally. I go grocery store
well,
when they're at school. I don't. Yeah, I will not shop with them.
It's like an hour and a half versus 45 minutes. You know, it's just really, you know, I get it, and it's just again, it's, you know, figuring out what your values are.
What do you think, babe? Because I think we're on the same page. I've talked about it before. Totally. What do you think on the social media?
I'm just not for it. I'm not. They have all their life to do it, and she won't. I don't feel. And tell me how you feel about this, because I know we're gonna get some feedback from her. But I don't feel that they should have a phone until they can buy it and they could pay their own bill. What do you feel about that? Do you feel, because I know like she's 10. You know, she hasn't really asked, like, you know, well,
then maybe because we've already made it clear, like, hey, when you can buy a phone and you can pay for it every month, then you can get a phone. Well,
and I guess, you know, again, it's your choice. Yeah. You're the parents. The other side of that is that it doesn't necessarily get in the way, but I think schools more and more are helping to teach kids about how to be a citizen online. So there are things that happen at school. I know I've had other parents that were very hardline about the phone, but then realized how left out their daughter, it sort of singled her out.
Right.
Because so much of that, after school, it was us on the phone. You're talking to your friends on the phone for hours. Now they're on text or they're on chat rooms.
Yeah, people don't have house phones.
Right. And especially not the ones with like the 6-foot cord. But so you have to balance those things out. And I guess, and I would say, what does pay for it mean? If you want a cell phone, these are the ways you pay for it. It could be extra chores. It could, whatever that might be, so that because what I hear you say is I want them to value this as not a given and not an expectation and not a right.
Yeah.
But a privilege.
Well, I think the thing is that when they get to the point where they can buy it and they can pay for it every month, they'll be at a point mentally and
mature.
I mean, because you're going to have to be working.
Right.
So that may be 16.
Yeah.
And at that point, maybe you can start understanding and handling like when somebody says something mean on social media.
Yeah.
I think a compromise that we've kind of came up with, or we didn't come up with it. Facebook actually came up with it, but it's the Facebook Messenger for kids. And they can, I mean, you guys do your own research on this, but what I like about it is that it's just a messenger. You don't need a phone number. They have a tablet, so they can communicate with my mom, with my cousins, with their aunts and uncles. We have to okay it, and through our phones, we can see what's happening.
Right.
And they're not seeing all the posts that people are putting. They're only communicating with specific people.
And that's a great compromise. I always say, again, another thing to put on the scale when you're weighing yes or no is, and I always say this with parents when we talk about giving kids responsibility and giving chores, whether you pay or whether you don't pay, giving kids responsibility around the house teaches them responsibility. Starting to give them choices outside of the home. We want our kids making as many mistakes as possible while they're still under our roof, and we can help them.
Yeah.
So phones fall into that. So if you say, if your daughter doesn't get a job until she's 18, well, now she's 18 and she has a cell phone for the first time. And she has learned what she's learned from you up to 18. She's got values. She's got good decision making, but she's still got this toy that she's had for the first time. So it gets a little scary. So again, you put that on that scale of, do you want them making all of those mistakes?
That's a good point, yeah.
While you still have the authority to say, I have your password. I can look at your phone anytime I want. There are apps where, just like Facebook Messenger, there are apps where you can see all of their texts and if they do email on their phone.
Yeah.
So you can connect it to your phone.
Do we let them know though that we have access to all of that, or just put it on there?
What's your spy like a creep?
Well, there's spyware. I mean, there is parent spyware that the kids do not know it's on their phone.
Yeah.
My opinion as a parent is when you are honest with your kids, it creates another barrier. If you say, I will see everything you see, because that's just another level up of, I've got your password and I pay for your phone. I own your phone. I get your phone whenever I ask for it.
Yeah.
And so it's another step up in security. It's another step up in, I am trusting you with this phone and I'm here as your backup. So this is on the phone. So think about, if you're going to say something to a friend, do you want your mom reading it?
That's actually,
and that's a great habit to get into when those parents, at 25, I want to say, when you say something out there, do you want your mom knowing what you're doing at 25? That's a good,
we got to shut this podcast down.
I know. That's a good value filter though. When you think Mom. About it, it's like, it's again, somebody's, cussing up a storm. Would you talk to your mother with that mouth? It's like, it's that same thing, it's like the mom rule.
Yeah.
Well,
that's really good.
This has been an awesome podcast. This is actually
so much
our
fun.
longest podcast. We're almost going on 2 hours.
Well,
no, we're not.
No way.
It's been an hour and 45 minutes.
So that's why I'm saying let's cut this up.
No, we'll be fine.
No,
but we can do it again sometime.
I think we should, 2 hours.
So We'll figure it out.
Work on that.
Yeah.
But
Anyway.
I would love to have you back regarding that, because
Yes.
I think that's a
There's
huge...
so much. I mean, we could talk for hours about this stuff. There's just so
Yes.
much, so much to talk about. But
with parents, just you're doing great. You're doing
Yes.
great. Just
if you're looking, if you're trying to get better, you're already on the right path.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Sandy, if anybody wants to get a hold of you, how could they do that?
They can do that through email. It's sandy.cimino@gmail.com. I do have a website. Right now I'm refreshing it, so I've shut it down, but the website is thewell-madebed.com. Thewellmadebed.com.
Thewell-madebed.com.
Yeah. And that should be up soon.
Sandy.Cimino?
Yes, Sandy with an I.
And how do you spell Cimino?
SandiCimino.
Correct.
At gmail.com.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yay. And if you guys want to get a hold of us, you can find us on all our social media at Opposite Pod. You can go to our website, oppositesattractpod.com, and you can subscribe to the show. Definitely share this, because that is the best way that the podcast gets out. I think we've talked about a lot. I mean, it seems like we just got started.
I know.
And it's
awesome.
crazy. But thank you guys for watching. Make sure you go to trustinkusa.com to check out the notary and the legal services. And thank you guys for being with us. Thank you, Sandy,
thank you
so
guys.
much.
This was so much fun.
This was amazing.
Love it. Love you guys. And until next time.
We'll talk to you later. Bye.